Hey, everybody, welcome to episode 14 on independent music labels. Now, before we have a conversation with Spencer from Avalon Street Records and Will from Prepaid Friends Records, we're going to dive into the history of music labels and how long they've been around, and why the independent labels took over the whole, they took over the music scenery. Okay? Again, there's a lot of history, so sit back and relax as we dive into the history. You ready? All right. Now, before the music industry became the powerhouse today, it started with a single invention that changed everything in the music scenery forever. From wax cylinders to digital streaming, record labels have played a major role in shaping the careers and artists and the way we experience music. But not all labels are created equal. And today's industry, knowing the difference can be a key success in your or downfall of your music success. You ready? Here we go. A brief history on music labels. Now, I want you guys to remember this name, okay? Because without this guy's invention in 1877, the music industry would never be existed, period. Thomas Edison, he invented the phonograph. This is the first major step in the recording sound. Without it, again, we would not have music, we would not have radio stations, internet radio station, everything that we need today and survive on music. This guy is the key element of everything, okay? Now, in early record labels from late 1800s to 1910s, companies like Columbia, Victoria Talking Machines focus on producing and selling records than really developing artists. Now, there are talk that the Victor Talking was basically made for only business and dictation, not recording music. And those are devices called the reel-to-reels. All right. Now, the rise of the A&R music labels in the 1920s and 1930s, a modern concept of a music label took shape as the company began signing and developing artists instead of selling records. The A&R division became responsible of scouting, shaping, and talented. Major labels like RCA and DACA gained power, setting the foundation of today's music. Now, the booming of the 1950s, the rock and roll and Sun Records. Now, in 1952, the founding member of Sun Records, Sam Phillips in Memphis, Tennessee, wouldn't be able to do anything without Elvis Presley, Johnny Cash, Jerry Lee Lewis, and other legendary rock and rolls. These guys, this label was probably the very first to establish in the 1950s, because rock and roll back then was brand new. Rock and roll was named as the devil's music. Remember that history of that? Yeah. All right. So in this era, it proved that independent labels could compete with major at once by discovering and launching icon artists. That's where the idea. Now, this part is going to be a long one. The rise of independent music labels and why they matter. Why indie labels started in 1940s and 1950s, independent labels emerged to support genres overlooked by major labels such as blues, R&B, and rock. Now, Jackson, Miss Granny guitarist, started Moon Records in 1956. She was the first woman to own her independent record label. Jackson, like any other musician in Nashville who was shut down by male-dominant industry, instead of waiting for her opportunity, she built her own label, providing other indie labels are more than just music. They are about artistic independence. Now, in 1950s to 1980s, we have the punk era, alternative and DIY labels. Indie label experience and artist rejection major label control. Now, moving forward, We have in the UK, we have Stiff Records. Here in Seattle, we have Sub Pop, who gave us the grunge. They raised an underground movement. In the 1990s and present, the labels, independent labels, become more powerhouse in a digital revolving allowed the independents to compete with major ones, and streaming and social media and leveled the playing field. Why does this matter? For artists today, signing with a label can be a dream come true, or it could be a complete nightmare. While independent labels offer a creative freedom and support, there are also scams likely to deals out there, so how musicians can protect themselves. I am going to sit down with Spencer from Avalon Records and Will from Prepaid Friends Records. What I'll be asking them today is basically questions and interviewing labels to make sure you guys know what is the best way to talk to a label when you're shopping for one. Okay. Now, Spencer, he's only been around since 2023, so he's brand new. He's in Nashville. And then Will, he's actually from Portland scene that recently moved up here in the Pacific Northwest. So again, I'll be asking them questions. What I found on the internet, how to talk to independent musicians or how you guys should, interview labels. And on top of that, they're going to give you guys reference how to avoid being scammed. Okay? That's a lot of history. Hope you learned something. And again, remember the guy named Thomas Edison, because he's going to pop up in later podcast episodes. Got it? All right. Let's dive into the interview. At first, Papa Satch, play that theme song for me. Hit it, guys.
Let's talk about the music. Let's talk about the band. Let's talk about the music. Let's talk about the sound. Let's talk about the music. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about the music. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about the music. All around.
All right, guys, this is Shels from Let's Talk About the Music. This is going to be episode 14. And if you guys remember episode 12, we had band managers on the show. Well, this episode, we're going to have music labels. Okay? So, we're going to go around the room here, and I'll introduce you guys who the guys are, and then they can take over, introduce themselves, because this is going to be audio and visual, where this is going to be on Audio Boom, Spotify, where people want to listen to podcasts, and then 3 days later, it'll be on YouTube, so people can actually watch our beautiful faces. Ah. All right? So we're going to start with Will. He's here in the Pacific Northwest. He has a band label called Prepaid Friends Record. It's a small independent record label here in Pacific Northwest. Hang on, bring this over so it's easy for me to read it. And he encouraged concert promotions under the name Prepaid Friends and collaborates with different artists called Sponge. So.
Yeah, I did book some shows for Sponge out in Portland and Seattle.
Okay, all right.
One of the more prominent bands that I worked with.
All right, so tell us more about you, and we'll go down the next one.
Sure. So I started managing one band, the band Perusia. It's a Portland-based rock band. That was in '99 that I started that. And when they recorded their first album, we didn't really know what to do with it. So I created a record label called a Prepaid Friends Records. Had a business partner. We released it. The next year, 2000, well, that was in 2001 that we released the first album. Then their follow-up full-length album we released in 2002, which kind of spurred a bit of a boom, at least in my tiny little independent record label world, where I started getting a lot of submissions. We did eventually sign 2 other bands to the label and release records for them. In 2004, kind of winded things down at the time and really deactivated everything. Perusia broke up at that time, and my business partner did continue doing some things under the Prepaid Friends name at that time, but really restarted it in 2014. Perusia came back together, released a record then, and have released several. We'll release another probably this year or next for them, and started doing concert promotion as well, working with different artists, mainly doing booking for them and concert promotion in Portland and Seattle primarily, but kind of across the West Coast. I do a lot of booking through the label, which is most of where I work with bands now. So there's several bands in Seattle and Portland that I work with, and um, that's probably the quick version. I'll let Spencer give your intro before I bore you with long stories.
All right, so we are out there. Spencer's out there in Tennessee, and Spencer is a award-winning songwriter, musician, and producer. He founded Avian Street Records as a digital
Avalon.
label. Avalon, thank
Avalon Street.
you,
Yeah.
Avalon. A digital label dedicated to represent and collaboration with original, inspiring independent artists. So, Mr. Spencer, tell us more about you.
Yeah, I'm a singer, songwriter, musician, producer. I wear many hats, worship leader. I've been in the music business for well over 20 years now. I've been a musician for over 30. A record label is something I'd thought about starting for a long time, probably more than a decade, but wasn't exactly sure how I was going to do it or what the process would be. So we're fairly new. Just started up in 2023, the summer of 23.
Oh wow, you're very new.
And oh, very new. Yeah. So it was one of those outlets to where we're fully digital. We don't do any physical distribution at the time, but it's myself and then the vice president of talent relations and production, CJ Moeller. We can do a lot of tracking at my home studio. He also does mixing, mastering, tracking, and also has some. He does some talent management as well. Depends on who we're working on and what their needs are. And basically at ASR, we like to work on developing new artists, helping them with branding, merchandising. So that could be, t-shirts and merch, logo design. There's a lot of artists out there that there's a lot of things they could do themselves, but they're not exactly sure where to start and how to market that. So that's one of the things I try to do is just try to get a plan together, get everything organized. Obviously, if they need to record their music, we do have a full service studio. We can work remotely. We can do remote sessions for mixing and mastering, tracking. Myself and CJ are both musicians, so we can track instruments and stuff for them as well. So it's all about helping those that are getting started. And we've also had a few bands that, they already have their own thing going, but they just need that little bit of an extra push or a little bit of a help in promoting. So we try to do that and just build a community of artists that kind of encourage each other, and we all just kind of grow together.
Yeah, sounds like a good idea. Well, all, what we're all trying to accomplish is make a community and help each other out.
Right, exactly.
Alrighty, so we're gonna go through some questions. I found some questions on the internet, so you guys can answer the best as you can. If you guys don't know it, then we'll figure that out. All right, so with your guys' labels, do you guys find the genre that matches your labels? We'll go for Spencer first.
Oh, okay. Absolutely not. We'll take any genre. I've been predominantly rock my entire life. I've always loved rock music. That was the first love for me. Rock, pop rock. I've done pop, contemporary country. But on my label, we've got I've got a ukulele player who plays rock music with a ukulele, rockabilly style,
Nice.
and that's Damon that you had mentioned before. He's such an incredibly unique talent, very niche. So I love everything that he does. I've got a folk Americana singer. I do distribute my own music through the label. I've got a band in the Philippines right now that kind of do shoegaze and punk rock kind of deal. So I'm open to anything. I would love to have R&B, hip hop. I mean, anything we can get. And again, just to build that community of fellow artists and help each other.
Okay. Mr. Will?
Yeah, I'm a rock label. Um, it's modern rock, alternative rock, indie rock, but I do not really stray out of it. It's probably the genre that I really listen to that appeals to me the most, and we just don't do that much. So I really haven't diversified from a genre standpoint. It's unlikely that I would, um, given the size of the operation.
Okay. Okay, so what is your guys' vision of your guys' label? We'll go with Will this time.
Sure. Um, you know, I really I my label does not generate a lot of money. I mean, it doesn't like I underwrite it by working a full-time job. So where I see my role in the music scenes within Seattle and Portland is someone that just kind of supports um, bands that I think are very good and that I want to help, and venues as well. There's certain venues that I work with, and trying to help develop a scene. I mean, he mentioned that he's working on a scene in Nashville. And there, to a great degree, when I started in Portland back in early 2000, there was a scene, and um, it was the first thing that I had done. So I didn't really know what to appreciate or what to think of. This is unique, or
Mm.
um, but it was. I mean, there was a healthy rock scene. People helped each other. People went out, like the audiences, like you could draw crowds. It's really hard, at least in these towns these days, to do that. If you're not a band that people know from the radio, or TikTok, or I it's changed so much from the past 20 years. Um, and so like I'll release new music, but that's a smaller part kind of what we do. So like I don't, as a label, most people focus on releasing new records, and I'm more focused on booking and concert promotion because I just don't release that many things. But when I do, it really focuses things. We'll release an advanced single for the summer tour, um, coming up in 2025, and then we'll figure out what to do with the full length album. But at the end of the day, I'm just trying to help support a scene and see if you can grow one again or get involved in supporting one.
All right. All right. Spencer?
Yeah, I'd have to echo a lot of what Will said as far as building a scene um, and it just goes back to what I said earlier about being a community and just encouraging each other.
Right.
I found this a really cool exercise in I've always focused on my own creativity, being a singer-songwriter and releasing my own music. So being able to work with other artists and whatever they're doing, it's kind of thinking outside the box for me, because then I can look at it from not necessarily a personal aspect, but from an outside looking in and say, hey, what if you try this? Or, maybe one of the artists on the label is talking to another and says, hey, I really like this. What if you did this? And it's a way to be creative, not just with your own stuff that you have, but also being able to reach outside and help create something with somebody else. So it really just creates, a whole garden of beautiful flowers musically.
Cool. So do you guys both work with the musicians, how what they want, what you see, vision for them? Or is it all about what they want, or is it all about what you want? So do you guys work with each other, with the
Uh,
musicians?
it's 100% collaborative for sure. I encourage
Okay.
that. I absolutely encourage that.
I would agree with what he's saying. It's definitely a, a collaboration, and my view is less. I get less involved in creative. It's very small things. If I go back and say, hey, I'd like to hear more like background vocals on this, or like this type of guitar part should come forward a little bit. Like it's very subtle things. Like they've sent pretty much completed recordings um, for the songs, and so where I would really start to have um, the more important opinion is developing the artwork, the order of the songs that go on there, what the release plan is, like when the timing of that, what we're gonna do, and then all of that, um, like mastering and graphic design. I farm all that out to different people, and then when I get those back, then we'll sit down with the band and review it and say, is everybody on board with this? We may tweak designs, um, and anyway, come to a consensus that really is collaborative. But the creative work on the songs themselves, I think, is 99% the band's.
Okay. All right. So how many bands are actually on your rousters? Can you label can you name some?
Sure. For me, Perugia is the flagship band. It's why I started the label back in 2001. I also do booking and work with JJ Braves. It's an LA based, um, sort of almost an 80s style, arena rock style um, artist. And Fortress of the Bear is a band in Seattle, great rock band that I work with. I've done a lot of booking for them. Um, and I, there are some other artists that um, I work with here and there that I wouldn't say are on my roster. But those are probably the three principal ones that I do the most work
All right, Spencer.
It sounds like you have some great artists, Will. I need to check out your stuff.
for.
Sound like it's
I think so. You
yeah.
should.
So
Everyone
like
should.
yeah, it sounds like it's right up my alley for sure.
Nice.
Of course, I'm a 90s kid, so I grew up with the whole Seattle scene and the grunge and post-grunge stuff, so I love all that stuff.
Well, then you would.
Yep.
Well, I guess I would say the main artist on my label, as funny as it sounds, would be me because I started the label as a way to distribute my music and kind of represent myself as a business entity. But there was also a rock band I was in for over 20 years, Generation Down, so I released stuff uh, with them through that label as well. Damon Brazel, who we mentioned earlier, he was one
Hmm.
of the earliest signings. He's absolutely the most unique. I love everything he comes up with, and he's one of those we were talking about earlier, just the collaboration and the great ideas. He's full of them for sure. And I always believe that a good idea can come from anywhere. So always be listening. Also got a folk Americana singer, Jason Webb. He's also amazing. He's kind of like a Bob Dylan meets Kurt Cobain kind of sound.
Okay. Okay.
He's really, really, really good as well. He's an incredible songwriter. He's released over 20 self-made albums over the years. And then I've also got the shoegaze band out of the Philippines, the Daydream Sparrows. They just released a new single as well. I've had a couple in the past. I had another one in the Philippines area, one in the UK that stayed with me for a little bit. So I've had a couple come and go. And I'm also talking to a bluegrass country group as we speak that hasn't come on board yet, but we're talking. So very
Awesome.
diverse.
Cool. Rock on. All right. All
One band
right.
I neglected to mention, I probably should say, is there was a band called Elbow Fin that was a big part of the label back in 2002, 2003. We released a record for them back then. And then I've done something with them that and they're this sort of spacey rock um, kind of band that moved to Portland from Utah and
Uh-huh.
ran into them at a show and got to working with them. Anyway, they have not been a band. They've been broken up for quite a while, but this is a service that, I think some people might think about, um, because I have done releases of back catalog for them because, when they were a band, they weren't digital releases back then. So I currently have two albums up that I did re-release for them and probably will do more of their catalog in the future. But it's something that I think people that had a band that had any level of accomplishment may want their music out there and available, even if it's, I mean, in the streaming world, you're not going to make a lot of money.
Right.
But I think just having it there so that if you get in a conversation with people, you can send them somewhere. They can check out what you did. Um, and getting it back out there is something that I think would be really appealing to people. I mean, they can do it themselves, but it is something that I like to do, and I think it's a good service.
Awesome. Now, what about the royalties? Do you guys split up the royalties between the bands, between you for a service, or how does that work? Since you're more experienced, maybe you'll help Spencer out. I don't know.
Sure, yeah. Um, the thing I would say first about my label is there's two different periods of time. So I really have to break this up. For the period between 2001 2004, we were doing physical distribution, selling CDs, pretty much exclusively. And we moved a good deal of CDs, thousands of CDs, which at the time didn't seem like that many, but in the grand scheme of things, it was. And I would kill to sell like we used to
Mm.
these days. Um, and back then, we really kept records of all the expenses, and then where like whatever profit was left, I that went to the band, and I think I had a 10% of it. But we're not talking about huge money. And then these days it's very different because most of it is digital. Like you're getting streaming money, and it's not a ton. But I have very meticulous records that I can check for it. And basically, for me, I'll just subtract what my expenses were to set it up and promote, and then whatever gets generated after that, I just give to the bands. But you're talking about hundreds of dollars. It's not. This is not big business when you're dealing with streams. And I say that Perugia has a song with like 170,000 streams. They do very well for an independent band, but it just does not generate that much money, not enough to really make a difference.
Wait, you made $100? Tell me more.
I see you know what the landscape is like these days. It's hard.
All right, Spencer. So the same thing. Will the royalties have you have same question with the royalties?
I don't know. I'm over here waiting on $100 now. That's I think I think I'm just going to keep going. I'm not going to give up on this. I might make it one day. No, everything that I do, like I said, there's no physical distribution of the music. It's all streaming. So what I've set up with all the artists is a 50-50 split of everything. So I do not charge the artist for the website build. I do not charge the artist for uploading their music to the streaming services. I do not charge the artist if I do put up like a lyric video or some kind of promotion, all the sharing to the Facebook groups and the different kind of ad campaigns and stuff that comes with that. I don't charge the artist for that. The creation of merchandise, any kind of logo design, I don't charge them up front for that. So it's just an even 50-50 split of all the profit that comes in. So let's say you make 32 cents from streaming, then that's 16 for me and 16 for you. It's pretty simple. Um, but of course, the physical merchandise like the t-shirts and stuff like that, you make a few dollars here or there. Um, but again, as small as we are, it's not about the money. Uh, you
Exactly.
know, I don't want to invest a lot of money and lose it, but I don't expect to make a ton either. So I'm just trying to grow slowly. I'm trying to invest more in the creativity and again, the encouragement and lifting each other up and kind of growing
Right, right.
slow and steady. So
So, okay, so how about working with the band managers? How you have great experience working with them, or how does that work with you guys?
I haven't dealt with any managers.
Really?
I've just dealt with the artist directly thus far. So
Okay. Well,
Well, I mean, for my label, I am the manager also. So I
true,
deal with
true.
myself,
yeah,
and I'm very easy to work with. Um, in the concert promotion sort of wing of what I do, then I do deal with agencies, booking agents, band managers, tour managers. Um, and what I would say with that, the more established that a band is, the higher their expectation levels are when it comes to money. And that's like the part of my vision with some of why I do concert promotion is you mentioned the band Sponge. And
Hmm.
that was a band that I booked these shows for and then had Perugia open. And Perugia released a new album right before that. And that it was very intentional. The thought was that I can put these shows together and get big crowds out to see Sponge, and that will expose people. Because if you like Sponge and you know their 90s hits, like you would probably really like Perugia. And it was from that goal standpoint, like it was very successful. We did have great shows. Everybody loved Perugia. We sold in this day and age like a good amount of merchandise and CDs in vinyl at those shows, which is really why I did it. But there was a hefty guarantee at both shows for Sponge, and we did not make it back. We would have had to have sold, like, been close to selling out. We really weren't close. And there are a lot of expenses for those bands. Like, you got to get hotel rooms. I had to arrange ground transportation. All of that costs money. And then load out a guarantee. And then the venues themselves are also taking money out of it.
Right.
It didn't get to the point of profit. I mean, I would have loved to it if it was, but at the end of the day, I just footed a loss for it, which was okay because again, my goal was not necessarily that I was wanted to make money. All I would have done with it is to move it forward into the next promotion event. Uh, but part of that is my horrible business model, which is not to make money, but to try to support these bands and create opportunities for them where they can get great exposure.
Okay. Anything on to add to that one, Spencer?
oh no, it's that kind of explains it all. Even in a much bigger scale that Will is talking about, you're having to take care of all of the overhead first before you can even think about making money. So it's very important to invest more, I think, into the music and the development and creating the opportunities.
So let's go back to the marketing real quick. So when you guys work with a band, are you guys sending out singles first or the whole entire album? William, Will.
I'll go first. Sure. Um, so I am old and I prefer albums. Um, I think if you have enough good material, like you should put out a full album. Um, and there was a thought that the albums were going to die, and I don't think that happened. Now, I will say putting out singles is a big thing, and we are probably going to do that for the first time, really. Like we've done EPs in between full-length albums before, but I think I'm going to do a single. Um, doing and that song will end up on the full album. But as an advanced promotion, and knowing this world that we live in now, I think it's smart, and I should probably embrace that a little bit more. I just like the art of having a full album. And I think honestly, like if you're a young band, since we're hopefully talking to some young bands, um, that you should want to put out a full album. Like if you're doing shows or you think you want to tour, even on a regional level, you need enough material to play long enough. Like a couple singles is not enough to play shows. You got to be able to play at least 45 minutes. And some of these places where you could make a little bit of money, and I do mean a little, um, you might have to play for 2 hours. And if you don't have at least a full album, like that's going to be tough. You're going to play a lot of covers, and that's fine. But if you're an original band, like you need material. And so
Hmm.
I think the full album is very important, particularly early on.
Cover that.
Yeah.
All right, Spencer.
Yeah, I agree 100% with that. I think an album gives you plenty of space to tell a full story, whereas a single is kind of just a one shot. Um, I'm good with the EP idea as well. Of course, that's going to be a little more rushed, but yeah, a full length album tells you a whole story from front to back if you do it right. And I would always prefer to have a full album coming and maybe release 1 to 2 singles leading up to it is always what I've tried to do to kind of build interest. And um, my band from the Philippines, Daydream Sparrows, I spoke about earlier, um, they're in the process of trying to get things recorded. So we have released a couple of singles of theirs just because they don't have the album ready yet. Um, but they're a group of younger guys, super talented, super excited about everything. So I'm glad to help them out and just help encourage them to keep going to get everything done. So
So, do the bands approach you, or do you go to them? I'll
uh,
start with you, Spencer.
yeah, I would say I'm trying to think. I think everyone that's with me now approached me.
Okay.
Um, and I would just send out just a basic, a phishing Facebook post saying that we were looking for new artists, and I would kind of go through them. And there's some that I thought were okay, and then there's some that I thought were great. Of course, I would speak with them and get things working. And then there are some that they have bigger expectations than what I can
Mm,
deliver. So if I find a band that really doesn't need me as far as development, they already look like they have something good going on their own. It's going to be kind of a waste of time for us to even talk because I guess I'm more interested in the ones that are trying to find their way and just need to get organized uh, and like get the branding and the marketing and all that gathered together and moving forward.
okay. Well,
Yeah, so for me, I think everyone has approached me. That's how it started back in the early days. Everyone approached and asked, and I was getting submissions too, like in the mail. People would send press kits, physical press kits. This is a real history lesson here. And I would go review them. And to be perfectly honest, I got a lot of bands that I really was not interested in. Like I put the disc in and listened and was like, this is this isn't for me. Like I I prefer like really strong vocals, and if I'm not hearing that, um, then I typically am not interested. Now there is an element of me reaching out because when I book shows and I need like a 3 band bill, I may be looking in Seattle or Portland for a third band. And maybe the couple bands that I typically work with were unavailable or not right for a certain show. Then I will go do research and go try to find another band. Then I'll reach out through their contact page. And once I've done that, it is not uncommon for them to then say, can are you interested in adding us to your roster, or would you be interested in
okay.
doing booking for me? And that that has led to activity and partnerships, which I think is cool. It's very organic.
Cool. Yeah, there you go. All right. Now I'm going to ask you guys about COVID. So how did COVID affect you guys at all?
I've got I mean, I sit down and rest, Spencer, because it's gonna be a minute. Um, that
All right.
show, those shows I
I'll see you
mentioned,
guys later.
the the shows with Sponge when we released Perugia's Amnesia album, that was 2019, and that was towards the end of 2019, and I had massive plans for 2020. I had booked shows with a band called Driving and Crying, a pair of shows in Portland, Seattle. I had booked shows with Damon Johnson, who was the lead singer of Brother Kane, great 90s rock band, also to do a pair of shows in Portland and Seattle. I mean, booked contracts, everything, ticket links were up. And um,
Wow.
we
Perfect timing.
then COVID started to shut things down. Um, and the first one, anything kind of early in the year, started to get canceled. And I thought maybe we can hang on to stuff in the fall, and nothing. Everything got wiped out. I mean, it
Mm,
was really brutal because that album came out. We had a great pair of shows. We had some momentum, and then we could not follow it up. We couldn't play live. The guys did some live stream stuff. And I mean that I guess was cool for what was going on, but like you're not really connecting with an audience. Um, and it was tough. So I it was an incredible album, in my opinion. And I felt like it really got derailed. Where we did somehow start to get some traction on Spotify. And so those songs have done well in terms of streaming numbers. Um, but I that's really it. Um, and I feel like now we gotta move forward. I can't go back to an album that now at this point was 6 years old, but it feels like it was a couple years ago,
mm.
because time got super weird in 2020. Um, and
Yes, it did.
and now they have new material, which is we're going to move forward with another album, and hope that a pandemic doesn't derail this one.
Mm.
Yeah. Knock on wood.
Yeah.
All right, Spencer, what about you?
Well, for me, Avalon Street Records didn't exist in 2020 yet. Like I said, we just started everything up in 23. But as a performer during that time, it was one of those things where, where are you going to play? Everything was closed. And I've been a worship leader at church for over 10 years. And I think we maybe the summer before that installed a really good camera setup, three different camera setup, not even knowing that that's all that we were going to have the following year, which is pretty amazing. So
Wow.
we literally had two people at the soundboard, me, couple of band members, couple of singers on stage, and the pastor, and that was it. Less than 10 people in the building. So we just did live stream church services, and it worked out great. We made it through, but yeah, it was incredibly difficult for live performance.
Well, yeah, over here in Tacoma, it was pretty bad. I mean, we had shows over here booked up. I was doing live shows, I was doing streaming, and we had things lined up on St. Patrick's Day. That's when everything started happening.
Mm,
And I was going to try to stream everything. We're going to have, I think we had a big, huge festival, had like, I don't know, 15 maybe bands at this one pub, and we were really hitting out. Then all of a sudden, you got cancer, and we're like, "What? what do we do?" And so we waited. I even had an opportunity to go work at a station here in downtown Tacoma, and to do volunteer stuff, and we had to cancel that too. And yeah, it was crazy. We lost a lot of venues up here
mm-hmm.
in Tacoma and in Seattle. And so it's been crazy. So Nashville, I'll go down to you, Spencer. So when COVID hit, did you guys lose a lot of venues down there?
Yeah, there's always a revolving door at some venues. Somebody will leave and somebody else will come in. But yeah, it definitely changed the face of many companies here in town, not just music venues. I mean, restaurants, other businesses.
Yeah.
Uh, I remember hearing about them canceling the NBA finals that year, and I was just like, wow, this is like really serious. It was bad.
Yeah. Well, you will.
Yeah, I we lost a lot of venues, like Seattle and Portland. There were ones that could not survive, and they tried. I was in a very fortunate position because I earned my living with a different job in a different industry, and I was unaffected in that sense by the pandemic because my paycheck never stopped. Um, and so there were certain venues that I actually donated to and tried to support to help them get through. I did not want um, them to shut down because you build these relationships and it's hard. Like booking shows is really, really hard. And if you can develop a relationship with a couple venues in a town, like, and you lose it, it's brutal, like to start over and try to get back in. Um, because there's places in Portland that I know no matter what, like if I send them an email, they will respond to me. And that's just not common. As sad as that sounds, like if you send an email to try and do something with a venue,
Mm,
odds are good you're not going to hear anything back. Um, but the ones that were, super good to me and helped, got back to me and that I worked with a lot, like I supported them, donated to them, and tried to do whatever to keep them afloat. And fortunately, some of the ones that I count on the most, they made it. But there's a bunch of other ones that did not. It was a brutal time for music.
Yeah. Yeah. It's still they're still trying to climb out of that whole mess of COVID. So I'm hoping we don't go that direction. All righty. So let's go back towards the bands and their production. Do you guys go into the studios and help them record it? Or how do you work with that? We'll go with William first.
Sure. Um, so like this is again very different depending on the era. So
Okay.
back in 2003, I did go in the studio and it was um I wasn't really contributing a lot from a creative standpoint. I was more witnessing more than anything else, and supporting. Um, but these days, I most of that is happening in Portland, and I live in Seattle, so like I don't. They're in the studio on their own, and then they will email me um, tracks that we'll take a listen to, and then provide feedback, early mixes, um, and then pretty much it's all done that way. I'm not in person much anymore, not these days.
Okay. What about you, Spencer?
yeah, I'd have to say pretty much the same thing. A lot that's came to us is already recorded elsewhere, or at the very most, we'll have some rough mixes, and then we'll finish up mixing and mastering everything on our end. So we
Mm-hmm.
really haven't gotten to, as far as the instrument tracking portion of it, we haven't done anything like that just yet.
Okay. All right. So, let's see, what else can I cover? We went through the questions already. So, how did you guys get your band's your label's name? We'll go with Will because I thought the way that your name started with. I thought you were like prepaying, have the band prepaid, and to be in there. They're like, well, that's an interesting business model. Well, prepaid. So,
Yeah, no, I don't. I am the opposite of that. The truth is that it originated as a joke about fraternities and sororities. And apologies to anyone listening that loves the Greek system. But the joke is that if you join a fraternity, that you will then pay your dues and get friends, and thus you will have prepaid
oh,
friends.
gotcha.
And for whatever reason, I don't. We just liked it. And like I said, back in 2001 when we formed, I had a business partner, and we made a label, and we just decided to call it Prepaid Friends. And it's definitely not. Nobody gives us money in advance of anything. In fact, we rarely get money, period. So like I don't.
Right. Well, you said your name. I was like, well, that's interesting. So I was curious.
He's like, we're not even postpaid, much less
Yeah,
prepaid.
yeah, no, exactly. I should just take the word paid out because
Yeah.
nobody gets paid. Why would we?
All right. All right. So how do you get Avalon?
Avalon Street is the street that I grew up on in my hometown.
Okay.
I figured that's where I first discovered and fell in love with music and new music. So now that I'm discovering new music out there, why not? I thought it was a perfect fit.
Awesome. Awesome.
Where
All
was
right.
your hometown? Was it Nashville or was it somewhere else?
No, well, it's still in Tennessee, Northwest Tennessee on the Kentucky border. So
Okay.
it's almost a 3 hour drive from Nashville. So
Okay,
I haven't been
All
in
right.
Nashville for actually 20 years this year.
nice.
I got some musician friends out there in Nashville. I do plan on visiting Nashville in the future. I have a
Awesome.
lot of friends out there who are musicians who are out there. So now you guys mentioned earlier that when bands come, like for example, you have bands who approach you out about their uh press kit and such, and didn't really care for their music. Now, do you know other labels that might want to take them on? Do you actually work with other labels for that?
Uh, no is the short answer. And most of that was back in between 2001, 2004, where I would get them, and then I would, in most cases, just give a polite letter of decline and wish them good
Okay.
luck. Um, and I didn't have a big network of other labels to, I mean, not that I would be happy to have passed them along. I just didn't have good places to send that music to. Um, and for me, even back then, I was still working a full-time job. I didn't have a
Right.
ton of bandwidth to take on a bunch of different bands. So like I really had to like them a lot and really believe in them if I wanted to bring them on the roster and release something. So when I got to three, I thought I never was going to go past one, and that seemed overwhelming. So to do even more, like I really would have had been blown away.
Cool.
Right.
What about you as a young label? Have you reached out anybody who it doesn't fit your criteria, and then you do have other labels that you um can connect with?
No.
Okay.
No, but just expounding on what Will said, just and the fact that you do respond to them with a polite no, I appreciate that as an artist as well because how many times do you send out emails, especially trying to book at venues, and for
Right.
every 10 emails that I send out, I might get one response. And it's like you could at least tell me no, you're not what we're looking for or something. But no, I don't have a large network of fellow labels or anything like that. But I would have to agree if I'm going to put that kind of sweat equity into somebody, it's going to be something that first of all that I like listening to, bare minimum, and then you know the person that I'm dealing with, are they a good person? I've been in bands for 20 plus years, and there's all sorts of personality types when it comes to musicians. And if you're a complete jerk, then I really don't want to work with you. I don't care how talented you are. So, I believe you got to have integrity. You need to be humble. You need to be able to work well with others. So that's important too.
Okay. All right. All right. I had a question and I lost what it was. Hey, over here.
Well, I'll say, to build on your point about bands like not being jerks, um, I at any level, like that's really good advice that people need to think about. So I've seen bands that had a modicum of success, and you would have thought that they were playing arenas like the week before,
Hmm.
and it can be very difficult. Um, I say it should be really important to you to show up on time. If you're told to load in at 5 p.m.,
Yeah.
like show up at 5 p.m. Do not show up at the sound check time because it's rude to the other bands. And if someone is sharing a back line with you and they set up their drum kit or they set up their bass rig, and they're letting you use it, like you should respect it. Like don't put beer on top of it. Don't hit the, kick drum crazy hard over and over. Like whatever it is, just be respectful, be on time, and then the music part is obviously is also critically important, but you can do yourself a lot of favors by just not being a jerk, being very polite,
Mm-hmm.
respectful. Even if you don't like the other bands you're playing with, you think they're bad, like you can say, "Hey, enjoyed playing with you. Thanks." Like
Right.
just be polite. And you never have to play with them again if you don't want to. It's fine. But you got to be on time, and the professionalism I think is undervalued. There was a reputation for bands back in the 80s that, oh, you go destroy hotel rooms and you'd be
I
edgy.
remember
And,
those.
that if you're making millions and you're selling millions of records, you can get away with that. You cannot get away with that if you're not the
Yeah, if
biggest
you're
band in the
tiny.
world. So don't even try.
Yeah, if you're only drawing 32 cents and streaming, you can't do that anymore.
Exactly.
All right. So yeah, so we have a lot of bands over here that actually stays for the whole entire bill that supports them. And there's some bands that actually leave right after because of life situations. So do you are okay with them staying and how do you feel about that kind of support?
Well, I'll say I I can understand times when bands leave before everybody is done playing. Um, what I what I do think they should do is acknowledge that they are leaving. Go tell the promoter or whoever booked you, hey, we've got to you make up something. I don't even care. Just say, hey, sorry, we got to go. Thanks for booking it. Had a good time. Hope we can work again soon. And and that'll go a long way. Like I really get a bad taste in my mouth if a band plays first, breaks down their equipment, loads out, and just peace, they're gone.
Takes off. Yeah.
And there was never any like the bands that play after them probably sat in their audience and clapped for them, and you just left and didn't say anything to anyone, and that happens. And when it does happen, like unless that band was unbelievably good, I'm probably not going to be working with them anymore.
Okay.
Yeah, I would agree with all that for sure. Yeah, and in Nashville in the rock scene, I think it's gotten a lot better, especially after COVID. But beforehand, if you had, let's say, a four band bill one night,
Mm-hmm.
the headlining spot was number three. Because if you were number four and it went past midnight, everybody's clearing out of there. It's like the Cinderella complex. I'm going to turn into a pumpkin if I stay past midnight. So nobody ever wanted to play fourth. If you played first, not everybody was there yet. If you played fourth, everybody was leaving. So the sweet spot was two or three. So it was kind of that same thing, people packing up and leaving, and you're pretty much just kind of left out to dry if you played at the end. So yeah, I would agree with Will on that.
Then
I don't
don't
like
book
four
four
band bills.
bands. Yeah,
Right.
don't do four band bills.
Yeah,
Out
it's a
here,
lot. Like I
yeah.
there's worlds where people will stay out past midnight and listen to live music. I don't know a lot of them. Like every venue that I am at, like it's got to be over by like 11, and then we're good. Start your show
Wow.
at 8, three
I've
bands, that's it.
I've seen rock
Right.
shows. I've seen rock shows in Nashville. No lie, go to 2 a.m.
Oh,
100%.
Wow.
Yep.
Wow. Over here, we've been booking two bands per bill these days because people can't seem to stay past three.
Right. We live in a
And
TikTok generation for sure.
for
that's
sure, for
right.
sure. All right, so now we're going to go over to talk about trying to help bands avoid scam artists. So,
Hmm.
what is your guys' recommendation and try to avoid scams?
Well,
Anyone can start. Okay.
anyone that wants money in advance for anything is
Yes.
probably not worth your time.
Amen.
Um, and I've seen different types of scams. Sometimes people will reach out and in this super weird thing where they're like, I have an event and I want to book you. And sometimes I'll let this play out to try to figure out like what the angle is on it, kind of knowing it's a scam. But um, bands are can be desperate. Like if somebody says they're going to pay you $1,000 to play at a family reunion, they're probably going to listen to you because they want to make $1,000 and they want to play a show. And it's understandable. Like you can take an audience with all of these offers, but if they ever say to you, like, hey, we just need you to send us $200 for the setup, and then we'll pay you 1,000 after the gig, like that's shady. There's almost no
Mm,
chance that's legit. If you give them money, like assume that you're never going to get back, and there isn't really a show. And with labels, um, if they want you to invest upfront, again, I don't know what your position is. Unless you're independently wealthy, it's probably not the label you're looking for. And you go find somebody that will be a partner and will like support you without you putting in a financial outlay. And the the tough part is early on, you don't have any leverage, you don't have any success. So if a label is offering you a contract, like you don't have leverage and you might get bad terms. And I would say, and a band probably would sign up because giving up 50% of their publishing, let's say, is sounds good if you're making $0 and you're going to make something. But if you become very successful, that's horrible. So, like, be aware of terms. Like, if somebody wants to lock you in for long amount of time or a huge number of albums with really bad terms, like I would shy away from that as well. Like people can do a lot on their own too. Like build your audience and then
Yeah.
give yourself some leverage. Like
mhm.
go out and just play shows and see what you can build up on your own before reaching out.
All right. Spencer?
Well, if I was talking to a young musician, singer, songwriter wanting to get started and they're worried about something being a scam, a lot of times you can break it down into one sentence. Are you ready to take your career to the next level? Or we can take you to the next level, for just a little bit of this.
Right, right.
So, yeah, I've seen that so many times where there's predators out there seeking the young with the stars in their eyes, and they have all these big hopes and dreams. And just like Will was saying, if you have to pay an exorbitant amount of money up front and then say, yeah, we will provide this for you after you give us the money. I actually had a meeting with I'm assuming a label in Nashville one time, and they said, "Hey, we'll do these 2 or 3 songs for you. The cost is $20,000. If you can come up with 10, we'll pay the other 10." And I was like, "So basically, you just want me to pay you 10 grand to use your studio? That's what you're doing?" I mean,
Wow.
so yeah, and I'm perfectly okay with a label saying, "Hey, we'll shoot a music video for you, and you pay us for our labor or our time." That's anything. You go get an oil change, you pay for it. I get it. But to sell false hopes and dreams for a lot of money, I don't know. I just think it's kind of sick, to be honest. Especially me
Right.
being an artist and me being passionate about what I do and seeing people take advantage of people like that. It's horrible. And there's
Yeah,
plenty of that
but
around here. It's Music City. So,
right. Yeah, I have some friends of mine who actually got scammed. One is in UK. It was actually here in Canada, and his band didn't survive at all after that scam. Another one, um, he put out big huge posts about this certain label that scammed them good. They survived. They're with another band, another label now, so they're doing better now. They were able to recover because they have this support from another band. And so, yeah, it's really, really, it's really, really sad that people want to try to scam these artists who are wants to live the dream of being just a musician. So it kind of
Hmm.
sucks. So, especially if you, Spencer, since you are looking at bands as a brand new business who are starting up, you're basically doing it as a startup business for these
Right.
bands. So you're also that's big, very good on you because there's hardly any labels out there that's going to help a band start up. It's a good
No,
move
I
on
haven't.
you.
Yeah, I haven't found any. I always tell bands that my business model is, you have a band, so this guy, he's the bass player. This guy is the guitar player. I was like, consider me just another band member, and my job is to, build the website and promote your brand and create the logo and do the video and do the distribution. So we're in this together. That's the way I want to
Mm-hmm.
look at it.
Okay. All right. I like that. I like that. I like that idea. So, what kind of advice do you guys want to give to anybody else who might want to? I'll break this into two questions. Okay. If any of the musicians wants to join a label, what, how do you want them to, how do you want them to shop, or do they shop around and search for some stuff, or how do you want them to look at labels, make sure they're going to be a good deal? With a scam, they're shopping. How do you want them to proceed that? Did I
I
answer that
guess what
question right?
sure. I guess what I would say is go out and play shows, um, and play with other bands, and go listen to other bands at venues you want to play at, and don't go to an arena. Go to small venues and find bands that you think you like, and then once you find a couple bands that are on labels, then now you've got an idea of well, this is a label that could be right for me. Um, and then hopefully at that point you've got demo recordings and you've played shows and maybe you can draw some people. Maybe you have a good logo. I mean, these are assets that bands need. And then you can take that. Um, and I would say most communication now is probably through email. But
Right.
sending cold emails, it honestly is not that effective, but like there's not a lot of great avenues. Like unless the label has like a submission page where it's like you can upload a form, which is then a good way to do it. And that's kind of probably the ideal scenario. But if no band should just go like Googling labels and hoping to reach out and send information in and think that they're going to get signed that way. Like you got to build something up first and then be very targeted with what you want to do and be realistic. Like I don't in Seattle, like if you're a new band, you're probably not getting signed to Sub Pop just because you think they're cool. Like they're too big now. So look for something else. Work your way up to that.
Okay. What about you, Spencer?
Yeah, I would agree with all of that. And in addition to that, if you're looking for a label, I guess the question would be why? What's the reason? Um, I know as a musician in my early 20s, coming out of the 90s, it was just, well, I want to sign with a label. Why? Well, just because and in a lot of ways, you think that you've made it. That's how I've made it, is I'm with a label. And that model worked for a long time. And now you can do so much on your own. And just like Will said, go out and play shows, go out and do as much as you can on your own. And if you're going to approach a label, or if one approaches you, that question should come into your mind is, why? What is this going to do for me if I do it? What's the end result? Not just to say I'm on a label. Hey, I'm on a label. Why? Well, just because I am. What's the reason? So that's what I've tried to create with what I'm doing is trying to fill in the blanks for those reasons. Well, we need help with distribution. I need help with songwriting. I hate emailing clubs trying to book gigs. I'd like you to do that on my behalf. Um, as far as studio time is so expensive. We can do it a lot cheaper, just because it's me and a buddy of mine who have years of experience in studio production. Um, so it's creating that reasons why should you sign with us? Well, here's why. This is how we can help you. And if you're already doing all that on your own and you're doing a great job, then maybe you don't need us, and that's perfectly fine. You know but it's all
Mhm.
about that collaboration. Again, collaboration, encouragement, helping those who may not know exactly where they're going or what direction, and just kind of filling in the blanks.
All right, cool. All right. All right. Have you guys had any successful stories yet? Spencer, since you're brand new, have you had any bands successful?
Well, I
Any
guess
successful stories?
yeah, it's just it would all be how you would define success. I guess one of the most cool things that we do is there's several independent music award shows that go on
Okay.
all throughout the world. There's a big one coming up in the Netherlands next September, and I've got two of my acts already nominated for several awards at that award show. So they're super excited about that. So, there's so many ways to get recognized out there and just to help them. That's something they may not even thought about doing, was submitting to some of these award shows to see if you would get nominated. So to be able to be recognized for what they've done and to help them and to share in that excitement, that's a really, really cool feeling.
Nice. William or Will?
Great. Um, so back in 2002, this is like 22 years ago. It's my success story. But we released Perugia's first full-length album, the second release, and a couple things happened as a result. We did this three-show tour. We had Ian Moore open up, and the band Toad the Wet Sprocket was broken up at the time, but there was a side project that the guitarist Todd Nichols had started called Lapdog, and Lapdog also was on this tour. So those two artists in Perugia played this three-show tour in Eugene, Portland, and Seattle. Eugene was awful. Um, very, very small crowd. But Portland and Seattle were the biggest crowds that Perugia's ever played for. Like over 300 in both cities. And we made money. Like it was crazy. Like and that record got like some traction. We printed 1,000 copies, sold all of them. And there was a chart in the Portland newspaper that tracked Pacific Northwest bands and the top selling ones. And
Mhm.
that album debuted at number one. And their EP that had come out the year before recharted and was at in the top five. And then after that,
Nice.
we released an album for a band called 6 Foot Sam, and that album charted in the top five. And at one point, we had all three albums in the top five on that chart. And we thought, we're going to rule the world. We were wrong, but man, looking back at that period of time was really
Hmm.
quite a high. Like Perugia was drawing a lot of people on a regular basis and was very well regarded throughout the Northwest. They could go play Portland, Seattle to great crowds. We sold CDs everywhere. They would go to Spokane all the time to great crowds. Um, and that has been very hard to replicate in this current day and age. We don't sell CDs like that. There's an argument to be made whether you should even print them anymore. I think you
Right.
should, but very, very small runs because they just don't sell. We sell more vinyl these days than we do CDs.
Yeah,
Yeah.
But
vinyl's made a
vinyl,
little bit of a comeback, which
it
is cool.
is.
It is. It is. Vinyl
And
is really. I mean, I have a few albums from musicians actually in vinyl. Okay, what were
But
you gonna say?
it's expensive to print though.
well, that's
Yes.
that's exactly what I was going to say. It is expensive. Um, but and I don't even know that people have record players for sure. I think they're just cool to
I
buy,
don't.
and so they'll do that to support a band. They might not buy a CD, but from like an artistic art standpoint, like vinyl is pretty doggone cool, and it's way more common today that we sell that but like as he said, it's expensive to make. The margins are not great on it. Um, Not that anything that I do has margins and generates money, but um, all of it is to try to promote bands and push them forward and build an audience. And I think um, t-shirts is probably the other thing that's really important is you should periodically design new shirts, print new shirts, and sell those. You can make money off of selling shirts at your shows. And then the music is you got to have some kind of physical thing. And in my this is where a label comes in handy because they like I front the cost of all of printing the vinyl. And then once we make back the investment, then there's money to distribute, assuming that we ever get there. But I think that's where a label is helpful to a band is to say you need to do these things, you need to design these shirts, and a label can front the expense of that. Now they're going to take it back, so you may sell a ton of shirts and not see any money. But you didn't have to put any capital forward, so that's part of that reality.
Right.
But things you got to think about as a new small band.
Anything you want to add to that, Spencer?
I don't think so. He's talking about the vinyl as far as
Yeah.
I think both of you were talking about the who has record players. I will say my 10-year-old daughter does have a record player, one of the little suitcase ones from Walmart, and she does listen to it, which is funny because, back then that's all you had. That's just how you experienced music. Whereas now it's more of a niche market. And for her, it's something, oh, that's cool. What does that do? How does that work? She does have the option, of course, to stream on her iPad or whatever, but it's cool to see the fascination with it.
Nice,
I love
nice.
that.
Yeah, me too. Alrighty, so let's start winding down a little bit. So, last call. So, what kind of advice can you guys give a new artist coming, or yeah, new artist coming around? So let's start with Will. New artists coming to you. What kind of advice can you give them?
Well, play play a lot early on, play often, write material, and um, the more experience that you get in front of audiences, and even if it's an audience of two, the sound guy and the bartender, like you play as good as you can. And I've seen shows like that. There's Persia has also had shows where there was almost nobody in the crowd, and that's a tough thing. Um, but those guys are pros, and they played their hearts out. And if you do that every night, um, you might impress the right sound guy who might say, "Hey, I know nobody was here, but you guys are awesome. The best band I've heard for months, and we've got this show coming up in 3 months that is going to be packed. And would you guys be interested in joining that bill?" And those things, that's real things that happen. And
Hmm.
it would not come to pass if you didn't go out and you played your best and impress someone. And you never know where that opportunity is. So get a lot of reps and always do your best and be on time, for God's sakes.
On time. All right, Spencer, what
Yeah,
about you?
and don't be a jerk, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't be a jerk.
Is it really that hard to be kind? I mean, come on, people. Now, just to add upon that, yeah, playing live and to, writing music and composing, producing, the more you do anything, the better you're going to get at it. So just perfecting your craft. And if you truly love what you do, it's not work. It's not going to be tedious. You're going to love the journey that you're on for sure.
Cool. All right. And the last question, plug yourself, promote yourself. How can bands find you? How can they look you up? And how will they able to check out the roasters that you guys are doing? So go ahead and plug yourselves. Spencer, you first.
www.avalonstreetrecords.com. We're also on Facebook. We have a YouTube channel where we post music videos from all of our artists. So yeah, if you are an artist and you like everything I've said this evening, you might be interested in talking with me. It's very easy to contact me through there or just avalonstreetrecords@gmail.com. I'd love to hear from you, hear what you're working on, and if we're a good fit, let's go. Let's do it.
All right. Well,
I have a Facebook page. This is a good example for a small band. Like you can start a Facebook page for free, and not pay for a web domain. I do pay for the Perusia one, but I don't do one for Prepaid Friends. So on Facebook, it's Prepaid Friends. You can find me there. There's contact information there if you want to contact me. There's also events listed for any shows that I'm promoting. And if I'm promoting that show, I think it's really good. And I'm probably going to be there if it's in the Seattle area. You can hit me up at one of those shows. And Perusia, Purusa. If you can spell it, like you probably can't pronounce it right. If you pronounce it right, you probably can't spell it, but they'll be putting out new material this year. This summer, we're going to release a single called Waitlist that I'm really excited about. And hope if you listen to this that you'll go give that a listen and check it out because I think a lot of people are going to love it.
all right. And I am Shels, and every single episode, this will be a blog as well. So if you guys listen to, you guys want to be interested in checking these guys out to add your see what Spencer's doing, contact him. It'll be on that blog for information. So great. All right, guys, thank you so much. Stick around after this show. I'm done recording. I want to do something real fast. So okay, so everyone, thanks for listening, and I will talk to you next episode. Bye bye.
Thank you, Shells. Thanks, Will.
You're
Thank you.
welcome. Oh, you know what? I do have one more question. One more question. Sorry, Will.
Bonus
since-
round.
Yes, it's bonus round. Will, since Spencer is brand new label, what kind of advice do you give him? That's a good one.
Um, that is a good one. Like, uh, you know, it's such a tough thing, I think, because if you're going to do it as a real business, the revenue streams are very challenging. Like, where does that come from? Is it streaming? Because it's hard to pay anybody, including yourself, that way. So I think you got to figure out how to float it for a long period of time, maybe a couple years, and if your motivation is like love of the music and supporting artists that you like and yourself. I mean, as a musician, you got your own stuff out there. If those are your goals, then I think you can really be fulfilled by it. And if it does turn into like a profit turning business, maybe somebody gets on a movie soundtrack, maybe somebody gets on an ad. Like pursue the licensing if you can, because if you can land some licensing deals, not only do they pay pretty well, but like it's incredible exposure, and you will see that return in your streaming numbers. So the pennies can turn into dollars, and not much farther from there. But that is something, and I think financial goals are really tough early on in any music industry that doesn't have like deep pockets already.
All right. All right. Anything else? Okay. And that is all the questions I have. I promise you, we're now done.
Awesome.
All right. So stick around. I'll be right and stick around. Okay. All right.
Okay.
Let's stop this now. Okay, guys. Thanks for listening to Let's Talk About the Music. This is on independent musicians. Now, I did send out a lot of emails to a lot of independent musician labels. So if all of you guys watch this episode and you guys want to come on the show, you're more than welcome to do so. All righty. So just get a hold of me on LinkedIn, Facebook. Let's talk about the music at gmail.com, and I'll be happy to bring you on board. Okay. Until then, enjoy. Let's talk about the music, because the music is everywhere. Thanks for listening to Let's Talk About the Music. I hope you enjoyed today's topic. Remember, the show is more than just a podcast. It's a multimedia experience. You can enjoy the content as a blog, a both audio and visual format, or stay tuned to connect with other conversation. If you like what you hear, don't forget to subscribe, like, and hit that subscribe button. As that way you'll never miss an episode. Also, be sure to sign up for our newsletter for our latest update and exclusive content. Until next time, grab your headphones or tune in visually and let's keep that music journey together. Let's talk music because the music is everywhere.